Hi there and welcome to this 2-minute tips video, and today we're going to be looking at the user settings functionality in the Z series cameras. So it's likely this video will be a little bit longer than 2 minutes because the user settings functionality is a little bit more complex than some of our other 2-minute tips videos. But at the moment, with the slightly challenging times a lot of us find ourselves in, we've perhaps got a bit more time to invest in looking at the settings in our Z series cameras. So until recently, Nikon had two different approaches to storing user settings and user preferences. In the Pro interface, which was found in the D800, the D850, the D5, there were settings and menu banks, and there was 4 of each labelled A to D, and you could store different settings in each. But to switch between them, you had to go into the menu system and move between the different settings banks. On the enthusiast cameras, the approach Nikon took was to have user settings on the mode dial, U1, U2, U3, etc. So slightly different approaches depending on the line of cameras. With the introduction of the Z series and the Z6 and 7, Nikon have moved towards the enthusiast interface style of having user settings on the mode dial. So on the Z6 and Z7 you have 3, you've got U1, 2 and 3, and on the Z50 you've got 2, U1 and U2. And what these do is allow us to assign and set up different profiles to each one and quickly recall it by just selecting the U number on the mode dial. So it's pretty versatile and pretty useful. In this video we'll look at how you set it up, how to recall the settings, how to reset the user settings, and I'll give you some thoughts and tips on how I'm using the user settings functionality. So let's start with how you set up the user settings functionality. So the first thing is to set your camera up as you want it to be. So if you're used to using it, you may have it set up for different genres, and you have different settings for different styles of photography. The user settings functionality allows you to save pretty much all settings, both video and stills, except the settings that I'm showing on the screen right now. There are just a few which it doesn't store for you. The other thing to remember is that each user setting, so U1, U2, U3, will only store one option with regards to PASM on the mode dial, so program, aperture priority, shutter priority or manual. So if, for example, when you're shooting stills, you use aperture priority, but you quite often then flip to manual when you're shooting video. So a single user setting will have to either be aperture priority or manual priority. So as I said, the first step is to set the camera up as you want it to have in your user settings. So go through the menus and set it up as you want. And then what you do is you go into the menu setting, you go down to the setup menu, and on the first page the second option is save user settings, and you choose which user setting you want to save the current settings to and select it, and that's it. It's that simple. So you can do it up to 3 times on your Z6 and Z7 or twice on your Z50. So once you've set up as many options as you want, to recall them, you just turn the mode dial to the U1, U2, U3 settings, and of course you've got to select the stills movie selector to whether you want to shoot stills or movies. If you want to reset the user settings functionality and start again, then you go to the setup menu. You go down to page 1, and the third option is reset, and you can reset each of the user settings in that option in the menus. So it's really quite simple to set up and use, and can have some real benefits when you're shooting. As I mentioned, there are some limits, and probably the biggest one is that you can only have one mode from PASM in each user setting. And this is where planning comes in, and so if you plan your user settings well, you can get up to 6 settings from the 3 user settings, 3 stills and 3 video. So how do I have my cameras set up? Well, in user setting 1, I tend to use this for stills only, and I have it set up with aperture priority, and I have the autofocus set up to auto AFC and auto area AF. And this is what I use for a generic still starting point. I don't tend to have a movie mode set up in this, or not one that I use that often. My U2 setting is where I really move to movie mode, and in the movie settings here I have it set to manual mode. I have it set to standard 4K movies as I want to use it. So if I want to switch from standard stills to standard movie, I just move from U1 to U2. Equally in U2, I have for stills it set up to manual mode, obviously, because it has to be the same as movie mode, but I have it set to my long exposure settings for stills. So I'm getting 2 sets of settings, one for stills, one for movie from U2. If we go to U3, again it's in manual mode, and here I've set it, because I do some slow-mo movies, I've got manual mode, but I've got all my slow-mo video settings set up. Equally, I've got in stills auto ISO set up, AFC with wide area autofocus in the small type. So I've got 5 different settings across the 3 U settings. Now it's working quite well, but I'm going to keep adapting it as I keep trying different shooting genres. I was finding that when I was shooting with a single camera body, switching from stills to video, I was making a few mistakes, and this is where the U settings have come in really helpful, because as I say, I can switch from U1 to U2 to switch from stills to video, and it carries over all the right settings for me. So I hope you found this video useful. Let me know in the comments below how you're using the U settings, the user settings on your Z series cameras. Are you finding them useful? If you found this video useful, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video.